You don't fall in love, you apply for it. Somewhere along the way, affection became a performance review, not something you receive, something you qualify for, something you maintain through effort, attentiveness, usefulness. You learn early that love arrives with conditions, not spoken out loud, but implied in tone, timing, withdrawal. They hug you when you're quiet. They praise you when you're helpful. They soften when you anticipate their needs before they speak. And so your nervous system begins to map a rule. Approval follows effort. This is the quiet architecture of conditional attachment. According to attachment theory, when care is inconsistent, warm one day, distant the next, the child stops expecting love as a baseline and starts treating it as a reward. Love becomes something you earn through calibration. You become hyper-aware of moods, facial expressions, silence, micro shifts in tone. You learn that if you say the right thing, do the right thing, become the right thing, connection returns. And when it does, the relief feels like oxygen. Imagine a child bringing home a drawing. The parent smiles, but only after the child cleans their room. The drawing wasn't enough. Love follows compliance. So the next time, the child cleans first. This is how generosity gets rewired into strategy. In adulthood, it doesn't disappear, it evolves. You text back immediately, you remember every detail, you apologize for things you didn't do, not because you're kind, because you're negotiating. You offer emotional labor the way someone offers credentials. Look how supportive I am, look how patient, look how understanding, please don't leave. Relationships start to resemble emotional job interviews, ongoing assessments where your worth is measured in attentiveness, sacrifice, availability. You don't ask what you want, you ask what they need, and then you become it. Overgiving stops being generosity. It becomes a survival strategy, a way to maintain proximity to warmth that once felt unstable. Because somewhere deep inside, love still feels like something that can be revoked, something that expires if you stop performing. So, you stay useful. Rule card. If I am indispensable, I cannot be abandoned. But what happens when usefulness becomes the only language you know how to speak? What happens when being loved feels less real than being needed? Because in the next chapter, giving stops being protection and starts becoming addiction. At first, giving feels like safety. Then it starts to feel like control. Because if they need you, they can't leave you. This is where overgiving quietly shifts from strategy to dependency. Not on them, on the feeling of being necessary. You don't just want to be loved anymore, you want to be required. Psychology calls this hedonic adaptation, the nervous system's tendency to normalize emotional rewards over time. The first time they say, I don't know what I do without you, it feels electric, stabilizing, like your presence finally has weight. But eventually, that sentence stops working, so you give more. You anticipate problems before they form. You regulate emotions that aren't yours. You carry responsibilities no one asked you to carry, because the previous level of usefulness no longer produces the same reassurance. The emotional high fades, and like any fading high, escalation follows. Now you're not just supportive, you're indispensable. But there's another mechanism at play here, intermittent reinforcement, the same pattern that makes gambling addictive. They're warm one day, distant the next, appreciative sometimes, absent at others. And when your overgiving finally earns a moment of closeness, a thank you, a soft tone, a brief vulnerability, it hits harder because it's unpredictable. The inconsistency becomes the hook. You start chasing emotional payouts the way someone chases rare wins. Not because the relationship is fulfilling, because it's uncertain. So your self-worth begins to outsource itself. You don't feel valuable unless you're solving something, fixing something, holding something together. You confuse being loved with being depended on. And slowly, reciprocity starts to feel uncomfortable. When someone offers to help you, it disrupts the dynamic. When someone expects nothing, it feels suspicious. Because mutuality removes your leverage. If they don't need you, what's keeping them here? So you re-establish imbalance. You give again. More than necessary. More than asked. Not out of kindness, out of fear. Because being chosen freely feels fragile, but being needed feels binding. Rule card. Dependence feels safer than desire, and eventually, the moment you stop over-functioning, the moment you give less, fix less, carry less, guilt arrives, heavy, immediate, accusatory. Because in the next chapter, boundaries won't feel like self-respect, they'll feel like betrayal. The moment you stop overgiving, something inside you panics. Not relief, not freedom, guilt. Because when usefulness has always been your currency, boundaries feel like theft. You say no, and your nervous system reacts like you've done something dangerous, like you've just risked the relationship. This is the collision point between anxious attachment and identity. For years, you've equated effort with worth, availability with safety, self-sacrifice with stability. So when you begin to withdraw your over-functioning, even slightly, it doesn't feel like balance. It feels like abandonment. But not theirs, yours. Imagine replying later instead of immediately, letting them solve their own problem, not offering to help when they didn't ask. There's a silence that follows. And in that silence, your mind fills in the old script. They're disappointed. They're noticing. They're pulling away. Whether they are or not becomes irrelevant, because your identity was never built around being loved. It was built around being needed. If I'm not useful, who am I here? This is identity collapse, the destabilization that occurs when a survival role is removed without a replacement. The role was simple: regulate, anticipate, provide. And now, without it, connection feels exposed, transactionless. You begin to notice something unsettling. Some people do pull back when you stop overgiving. The dynamic changes. Their warmth shifts. Their investment recalibrates. Not because you became distant, but because the contract was never mutual. It was conditional on your performance. And when the performance stops, so does the reward. Which forces a question you've spent years avoiding. Was it love, or was it access to your effort? Real reciprocity has no performance review, no emotional invoices, no quiet expectation that affection must be prepaid in service. But learning that kind of love requires something unfamiliar, being chosen without earning it, and risking the possibility that someone might leave anyway. Rule card. If love must be maintained through exhaustion, it was never secure, because redefining love without transaction means giving up the only safety strategy you've ever trusted, and discovering what remains when you stop trying to deserve connection.